Imagine a person digging furiously in the sand at midnight, convinced that somewhere under the beach there is a locked chest full of gold. They dig until their hands bleed. They dig past the tide line. They dig even when the moon slips behind clouds, and all the while, the ocean is singing beside them, cool and endless. And they do not hear it. Here's the paradox. The harder we claw for happiness, the more it dissolves like salt in water. We treat joy as a buried object, a prize that must be earned by exhaustion. And then we wonder why our lives feel like a desert we keep crossing with no oasis in sight. Maybe you know this beach. Maybe I do too, in the only way a philosopher can, not by owning it, but by recognizing the footprints of our shared human hunger. We live in an age where happiness is marketed like a product in a G. Last case, buy this and you will be whole. Achieve that and you will be safe. Become someone else and you will finally be enough. Yet after each purchase, each promotion, each polished photo, there's that faint metallic echo inside the chest of the heart, still empty, still rattling. There is an old story from a village tucked between mountains. A traveler arrived carrying nothing but a bowl and a staff. The villagers were proud people. They believed wealth was security. They asked the traveler, "Where is your treasure?" He smiled and lifted his bowl. "Here," he said. They laughed. A bowl, a cracked wooden bowl. But the traveler walked to the river, filled it with water, and offered it to a child. The child drank. The traveler then sat under a tree, watching the wind move through leaves as though the world itself were breathing. He looked almost rich, not in possessions, but in presence, not in certainty, but in ease. The villagers began to feel something strange, envy mixed with curiosity. How could someone with so little look so full? We often think happiness is the chest. We forget the subtle truth that happiness is more like the map, and even more like the way we learn to read it, the treasure. Trove isn't a single haul you stumble upon one dramatic afternoon. It is a storehouse you build, one quiet decision at a time, by living in a way that lets joy accumulate like coins in a jar. Not the brittle kind of joy that depends on applause, but the sturdy kind that can sit with sorrow and still stay warm. So, I want to offer you 5 ways to build that trove, not as commandments, not as a self-help checklist. Think of them as 5 keys hidden in ordinary life. Simple keys, easily missed, the sort that don't glitter until you turn them in the lock and discover a door you didn't know was there. Before we reach for them, let's notice something together. You are already carrying a chest. We all are. The question is not whether life will give you one. The question is what you will place inside it, and what you will finally stop trying to force inside. Because some treasures can't be seized, they can only be received. And the first key begins exactly there, in the place you are most likely to overlook. This moment, right now, breathing quietly in your hands, right now, as you're listening. Your life is happening in a single, slender slice of time. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. This, whatever this is for you, a room, a road, a late-night glow, a morning cup, still steaming. And yet notice how the mind behaves. It is a talented runaway. It leaps backward into scenes it wants to change, then sprints forward into scenes it wants to control. The body stays here, faithful and breathing, while the mind becomes a commuter trapped forever between 2 stations that do not exist. We call that commuting planning, reflecting, being responsible. Sometimes it is. I'm not here to romanticize being careless, but there is a difference between using memory and living inside it, between preparing for the future and renting a permanent apartment in its shadows. Presence is not laziness, it's intimacy with reality. Think of a child eating a mango. They do not consult a 5-year plan. They do not scroll through regret. They bite, and their whole face becomes sunlight, juice on their chin, laughter in their throat. The mango is not better than your coffee or your commute or your laundry. The child is simply there, fully. The taste arrives in a mind that isn't elsewhere, and so the taste becomes a small universe. This is the first way to build your treasure trove. Befriend the present moment. Befriend it the way you befriend a shy animal, slowly, patiently, without lunging for it, because the present is shy. The instant you grab it and say, "I must enjoy this," you are already outside it, evaluating the moment instead of inhabiting it. How do we befriend now? We start ridiculously small. We practice attention like a musician practices scales. Feel the weight of your body in a chair. Notice your next breath without trying to improve it. Listen to a sound until it finishes. When you walk, walk. When you eat, eat. When you talk to someone you love, or someone you don't know how to love yet, look at them as if they are the only human you will meet today, because in that second, they are. A friend of mine once told me about a year when everything seemed to collapse. Work fell apart. A relationship unraveled. Their father got sick. They said, "I was so terrified of what was coming that I wasn't even alive in what was here." One evening they washed a single plate in the sink. Just one. Warm water, soap smell, the circular slip of sponge on ceramic, and something inside them loosened, not because washing plates is magic, but because for 30 seconds their mind stopped running and came home. They noticed a quiet fact: the present moment is usually survivable, often kind, sometimes even beautiful. It is the stories about it, the looping horror films of what if and if only, that are unbearable. Presence doesn't erase pain, it gives pain a chair to sit in, instead of letting it storm the whole house. And joy has always lived in the present. The future only promises joy, the past only remembers it. But the present, this thin, flashing doorway, is where joy can actually walk in. So each time your mind bolts, gently escort it back, not with scolding, but with the tenderness you'd use to guide a lost friend through a crowd. Happiness, the durable kind, begins to gather the moment you stop abandoning your own life. And yet, even when we learn to return to the present, we carry another habit like a hidden stone in our pocket: the need to control what the present becomes. We sit inside the now, but our fists are still curled around the future. We want guarantees. We want the world to sign a contract promising that if we are good, if we are smart, if we do all the right things, then life will not surprise us with teeth. But life is not a courtroom. It is a river. You can steer a little, sure. You can paddle. You can read the current. Yet the river will still bend where it bends. It will widen, narrow, rush, and eddy. The suffering begins when we demand that the river apologize for being water. Here is the second way to build your treasure trove: loosen the grip of control. Notice how control masquerades as love. I just want what's best for you, we say. Sometimes to others, often to ourselves. But beneath that can live a quieter sentence: I'm afraid I won't be okay if things don't go my way. Control is the armor fear chooses when it wants to look responsible. Let me tell you a small story. A gardener plants a seed and visits it daily. They measure the soil. They check the light. They whisper encouragement. Good, that's care. But imagine the gardener grows impatient and digs the seed up every morning to see if it's sprouting. They pull it out, dust it off, inspect it, and bury it again. The seed doesn't grow, not because the gardener is cruel, but because their grasping keeps interrupting the hidden work of becoming. Some of us do this with jobs, with relationships, with our own healing. We keep digging up the seed. Loosening control isn't the same as giving up. It's more like learning the difference between holding a bird and crushing it. You still hold, you still show up, you still act, but you stop strangling the outcome so it can't breathe. How? First, by admitting the truth that's been true since the first human looked at the sky and didn't know if it would rain. Uncertainty is not a bug in life. It's the operating system. Every plan you love exists on a floor of shifting sand. That doesn't make planning pointless. It makes planning humble. Second, by practicing what I call two-handed living. In one hand, effort. In the other, surrender. You apply for the job. Then you release the verdict. You speak your truth. Then you allow the other person to be who they are. You take care of your body, and you accept its seasons. Effort without surrender becomes tyranny. Surrender without effort becomes drift. Together, they make a kind of wise dance. And look what happens when the grip loosens. Happiness has room to surprise you. The best conversations, the accidental friendships, the sudden turn of a day into something luminous. These are not products of control. They are gifts of openness. A clenched hand cannot receive. An open hand can be filled. So as you build this trove, think of your life not as a machine you must master, but as a living thing you get to cooperate with. When you stop fighting the river, you start noticing the scenery. and you start floating. Now and then, in a gratitude so simple it feels almost like relief. When you become present, and when you loosen control, something curious happens. You begin to notice how wide the world actually is. The horizon stops being a wall you're racing toward, and starts being a landscape you're living inside. And then a new question rises, not shouted, not dramatic, but steady as a drumbeat under your days. What am I here for? We have been taught, quietly and relentlessly, that happiness is a private emotion, a mood you should secure for yourself. The way you secure a home, lock the doors, protect the perimeter, keep your joy yours. But joy is not a possession in that way. It is more like a fire. Hoard it, and it goes out. Share it, and it grows. This is the third way to build your treasure trove. Build meaning through contribution. Notice the paradox again. The culture says, find happiness by focusing on you. The sages whisper, find happiness by forgetting you, at least for a while, not as self-erasure, not as martyrdom, but as expansion. When your life is only about your feelings, your success, your image, your security, the world shrinks to the size of your skull. A small kingdom, crowded, easily threatened. But when you pour your attention into something that's not just you, another person, a craft, a cause, a community, your inner world suddenly has fresh air. Think of the last time you helped someone. Without performing it for an audience, maybe you held a door. Maybe you listened to a friend whose voice was shaking. Maybe you built something patiently: code, soup, a garden bed, a lesson plan, a bedtime story. In those moments, did you feel less alive or more? Usually more. Because contribution aligns you with a deeper rhythm, the rhythm of being part of life rather than merely consuming it. There's a tale about a violin maker who lived alone. He was not famous. He sold his violins for modest sums, yet he worked as if the wood were sacred. He polished the curves, tuned the voice of each instrument, and sent them into the world with a quiet blessing. One day someone asked him why he put such care into something that wouldn't carry his name. He said, because someone will play this when they are in love or grieving. I may never meet them, but I want their hands to find beauty. Do you hear it? He built happiness not by chasing it, but by planting it where someone else might one day sit in its shade. Contribution doesn't have to be grand. The ego loves grand. The soul loves true. Sometimes meaning is as small as doing your work well because it serves other humans you will never see. Sometimes it's forgiving one person, which changes the emotional climate of a whole family. Sometimes it's creating a thing, a song, a spreadsheet, a bridge, a meal that makes the day lighter for someone you don't even know. And here's the secret: interest that compounds. The more you contribute, the more you sense your life has weight. Beyond your moods, happiness becomes less fragile. It is no longer a butterfly you must catch. It is a garden you are tending. As meaning begins to root itself through what you give, you may start to feel another hunger, older than ambition. The hunger to belong, not to a crowd, necessarily, not to a performance, but to the simple fact of being human among humans. We are strange creatures built for connection, terrified of it, longing to be seen, trained to hide. And happiness, the kind that lasts, does not bloom well in isolation. It needs warmth from other lives the way a candle needs oxygen. So here is the fourth way to build your treasure trove. Cultivate loving connection, including with yourself. Let's be honest. We talk about love as if it is something that happens to us, like weather. I fell in love. Love left. I can't help who I love. All true, in one way. But love is also a practice, a verb, a daily posture of the heart. It is the way you choose to meet people: your partner, your friend, your child, the stranger behind the counter, the version of you that wakes up anxious at 3 a.m. with presence, patience, and care. Connection is not the same as closeness. You can be close to someone and still be disconnected, like two people scrolling in bed together, each in a different universe. Real connection is when you let another person be real in front of you. No fixing, no coaching mid-sentence, just attention, the kind that says, I'm here, and I can handle your truth. A woman I once knew had a habit of ending every conversation by asking, what are you not saying? She wasn't interrogating, she was inviting. At first people joked, dodged it, waved it away. But over time something tender happened. They started answering, sometimes with a laugh, sometimes with tears. Her relationships grew deep not because she was perfect, but because she was willing to stand near the unpolished parts of others. That willingness is love in its working clothes. And then there is the most overlooked relationship of your life, the one you have with yourself. Many of us speak to ourselves in a voice we would never use on anyone we love. We call ourselves lazy, stupid, behind, broken. We think cruelty will motivate us. It rarely does. It just makes the inner world a hostile country. How can happiness settle in a place where you are under constant attack? Self-love is not narcissism. It is the decision to stop being your own enemy. It's a hand on your chest saying, yes, you are scared. Yes, you failed. Yes, you are learning. And you are still worthy of gentle regard. When you treat yourself like someone you are responsible for, you become easier to live with inside your own skin. And from that steadiness, you can love others without squeezing them for proof that you're okay. Connection also requires forgiveness, not as amnesia, not as approval, but as release. Carrying resentment is like hauling a sack of stones and calling it strength. You don't forgive to excuse the past. You forgive to give the future a chance to breathe. So, in the quiet architecture of your days, let love be built through small acts, listening without rushing, telling the truth kindly, asking for help when you need it, speaking to yourself as a friend. Happiness gathers where the heart learns it doesn't have to stand alone. And now we come to the fifth key, the one that often looks too simple for our sophisticated suffering, the one the busy mind calls nice and then forgets. Yet it may be the most ancient, the most reliable way to let happiness accrue quietly in the background of your life. Way 5. Cultivate gratitude and wonder. Gratitude isn't a forced smile pasted over pain. It's not a denial of how hard things are. It's a way of seeing the whole field. If you only stare at what's missing, life becomes a ledger of debts. If you also notice what's here, life becomes a ledger of gifts. Two truths can live in the same room without fighting. Your grief can sit beside your gratitude like two siblings who finally stop trying to win. Wonder is gratitude's wilder cousin. Gratitude says, thank you for this. Wonder says, what is this really? It is the childlike astonishment that the world is happening at all, that your hands can hold a cup, that light can fall through a curtain and make the dust look like dancing galaxies, that another person's laugh can cross the air and land in you like a warm stone. Wonder doesn't require a perfect life. It requires an unarmored attention. Try this right now. Think of one ordinary thing you have stopped seeing. The way your room smells when rain comes. The ridiculous elegance of a spoon. The fact that your heart beats without asking your permission. The miracle of language. How marks on a screen become meaning in your mind. If wonder feels far away, it may not be because life is barren. It may be because you've been rushing past the orchard. So how do these 5 ways braid into a treasure? Trove. Presence opens the door. It brings you into contact with the only place happiness can live. Loosening control gives you open hands so happiness can arrive without being strangled. Contribution plants you in meaning, so joy becomes a byproduct of usefulness and care. Loving connection warms the soil, because hearts thrive in relationship, not exile. And gratitude and wonder are the sunlight, quiet, constant, turning small moments into gold. None of this is a trick to avoid pain. Pain is part of the contract of being alive. The treasure trove isn't a vault that keeps sorrow out. It's a storehouse that lets you meet sorrow without losing your capacity to feel what is still beautiful. Maybe that is the deepest paradox of all. Happiness isn't the opposite of sadness. It's the spaciousness that can hold sadness and still keep a candle lit. It's the ability to say, in the same breath, this hurts, and this life is a gift. So imagine your chest again, not buried on some faraway beach, not locked behind years of perfect self-improvement. Imagine it right where you are, in your actual life, with its imperfect furniture, its unpaid bills, its awkward conversations, its tender mornings. Each time you return to now, you drop a coin, and each time you release an outcome, another coin. Each act of contribution, each honest bond, each moment of gratitude clink, clink, clink until one day you look inside and realize the trove has been growing while you were busy living. And perhaps the final lesson is this: you don't build happiness to escape life. You build it to inhabit life more fully. Take one slow breath. Feel it enter. Feel it leave. Nothing to chase. Nothing to prove. Just this vivid, passing miracle.